Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into one of the most powerful and honestly startling conclusions in all of Western literature. We are talking about the breathtaking climax of John Bunyan's classic allegory, The Pilgrim's Progress. For those of us who followed Christian on his completely harrowing journey, we finally arrive at the ultimate triumph, the celestial city. But Bunyan does something wild here. He pairs this glorious victory with a deeply shocking downfall. It's literally a masterclass in narrative tension and theological warning, so let's get into it.
So, the whole book has been building up to this single arrival. Bunyan doesn't rush it. He dedicates pages to trumpets, shining escorts, and a city that shines like the sun. He sets up this magnificent, triumphant arrival for our heroes, Christian and hopeful, only to deliver a sharp, unexpected narrative pivot right in the very last lines of his dream. Actually, scratch that. It's more like narrative whiplash. The final image of this entire allegory isn't the grand celebration. It's a devastating reminder that the celebration was never automatic.
But before we witness that final ascent, we really have to understand the one absolute requirement for entry, the certificate. You remember those sealed rolls given to the pilgrims way back at the cross? Well, as we're going to see, entry into the celestial city isn't about how hard you tried or how eloquent your prayers were or even how much you suffered along the way. It relies entirely on carrying this specific mark of genuine reception into the king's own family. It is the one thing that has mattered from the moment it was handed over.
Now watch how this builds for Christian and hopeful. To get to the city, they first have to cross a terrifying river, which represents death, and it's an agonizing struggle. But once they emerge on the far bank, they leave their mortal clothes behind in the water. Waiting for them are these two shining men, ministering spirits, who just take them by the arms, and even though the city sits on a foundation higher than the clouds, the pilgrims climb it with total ease, effortlessly escorted by these shining spirits, just talking together the whole way up.
And what I love here is that Bunyan isn't offering some vague, formless bliss. Look at the specific rewards he details. We're talking Mount Zion, the literal company of angels, the tree of life, shining robes, crowns of honor, and this sweet reunion with everyone who went before them. He provides vivid, concrete details that function as an actual, tangible answer to everything Christians suffered to get there. It's a permanent place at the king's side. As they near the gate, a heavenly host comes out with trumpets sounding. It's like heaven itself has come down partway just to walk them the rest of the distance.
Finally, they hit the gate. They present their certificates, those vital sealed rolls, and the gate immediately swings open for them. The moment they step through, they're completely transfigured. They're dressed in shining garments, handed harps to praise with, and given crowns as tokens of honor. Every single bell in the city rings out in celebration, and a voice tells them simply and beautifully, "Enter ye into the joy of your Lord." It's the perfect, joyous resolution.
Now you'd think this is where the credits roll, right? I mean, it seems like the perfect ending. But Bunyan, still dreaming, turns his head and looks back. The gates shut completely on Christian and hopeful's joy, leaving us to look at someone else approaching. The celebration is sealed away, and the focus sharply shifts. We are suddenly forced to ask, what about the one man left outside? Enter a character named Ignorance. He arrives at that very same river, but his experience is entirely different. Unlike our hero's absolute terror and struggle in the water, Ignorance crosses the river with zero struggle. How? Because he literally gets a ferry ride. He's effortlessly rowed across by a boatman named Vainhope. He climbs the hill completely alone, there's no heavenly host to meet him, no shining escort, and absolutely no welcome fanfare.
Bunyan sets up a stark, highly intentional contrast here. Look at how perfectly he juxtaposes these journeys. The true pilgrims had a deeply difficult crossing, but an escorted, legitimate, and incredibly joyous arrival because they held the certificate. But the false pilgrim, Ignorance, he had an incredibly easy crossing thanks to vain hope. He experiences a totally isolated arrival, and crucially, he approaches the gate empty-handed. No certificate. It's an easy but fundamentally flawed approach.
So Ignorance reaches the gate and just confidently knocks. When he's asked for his certificate, he searches his pockets for one, but of course has absolutely nothing to show. Instead, he offers this defense: "I've eaten and drank in thy presence, and thou hast taught in our streets." Now, if that sounds familiar, it should. Bunyan pulls this almost word for word from Jesus' warning in Luke 13. It's the ultimate defense of a person who relied entirely on mere proximity to the king rather than true belonging.
And what happens next is perhaps the most unsettling moment in the entire text. It's just a chilling, absolute silence. Unlike earlier in the story where the character Faithful was able to bravely argue his case at Vanity Fair, Ignorance's downfall is shockingly quiet. There's no grand trial, there's no debate.
He simply has nothing to show, and that absence is the only answer needed. The king doesn't even come down to look at him.
In an instant, the command is given. The very same shining ones who so joyously escorted Christian and Hopeful are sent out again, but this time they bind Ignorance hand and foot. They carry him away through the air, straight to a terrifying door in the hillside, a door that leads directly to hell. It's that exact same door the Pilgrims had glimpsed much earlier in their journey on the Delectable Mountains. Okay, let's unpack why this happened and decode the warning Bunyan is placing right in front of us. Because this is the sharpest warning in the entire allegory. A smooth death, represented by Ignorance's easy ferry ride, is absolutely no evidence of a true faith, just like Christian's terror in the water wasn't evidence of a false one. Looking religious, walking the same roads, or having sincere confidence is utterly meaningless if you've never actually entered through the gate to receive that certificate.
Bunyan anchors this visually with the words written over the gate itself, drawn from Revelation 22:14. It frames entrance into the city not as some arbitrary reward handed out at random, but as the natural, expected outcome of a faithful life. This makes Ignorance's rejection consistent rather than cruel. He never actually lived that life of faith. He only admired the idea of it from a very comfortable distance.
And this right here reveals the core theological anchor of the entire book. On one side, you have genuine relationship, entering the family through the sacrifice of the cross, carrying the true mark. On the other side, you have mere proximity, being close to the faith, using the right religious language, and feeling a false sense of peace is entirely different from a real transformational relationship with the king. Bunyan is dramatizing a devastating warning about proximity without relationship.
What makes this so devastating is the pure tragedy of ignorance. He wasn't a malicious villain trying to trick anyone. He was just an ordinary, probably very likable person. It's heartbreaking to remember that earlier on the road, Christian and Hopeful patiently tried to reach him in conversation, but Ignorance was sincerely unpersuaded. He relied on quiet, false confidence, only discovering the awful truth exactly one gate too late. Everything culminates in this heavy, unforgettable line that just lands with the weight of the entire book behind it. There is a way to hell, even from the gates of heaven. Bunyan ensures his readers never, ever forget this. A religious appearance can carry a person right to the very edge of glory, right up to the final gate, before completely failing them. As Bunyan wakes from his dream and concludes his story, he turns and speaks directly to us, his readers. He asks us not to just admire the fun costumes of his allegory, the giants, the shining cities, and the talking characters. He tells us to take what is useful and leave what isn't, kind of like keeping the good fruit and discarding the core. He wants us to seriously examine what this chilling final warning means for our own journey. If proximity isn't enough, what are you truly relying on when you finally reach the river? Thanks for joining me as we unpack this incredible piece of literature. I hope it gave you something profound to chew on today.